You have lived before. You have lived before. This is not your first time around. If you're a man now, you've probably been a woman. If you're a woman now, you've probably been a man. You may have incarnated as another life form altogether. If you're a mom, you might have been a dad. If you're a child, you might have been a mom. You've probably been all sorts of things. We all have. Our soul seeks to gain experiences, a wide range of experience. Every lifetime is valid. Sometimes we play the role of a shopkeeper, sometimes we're a doctor, sometimes we're a homeless person wandering the streets, sometimes we're a little bit curmudgeonly or a little bit angry, sometimes we're sweet and warm. We're so many things, and the soul values all of it equally. I don't know how I could possibly cover the topic of past lives in just 30 minutes, which is my limit before my battery runs out. This is such a sacred topic. This is a topic that's so close to my heart, and I think if more of us could remember the incarnational experience, it would be so close to all of us, because to be in touch with the past life is to be in touch with the soul. It's to understand ourselves beyond just this moment, beyond just this body. So many of us are so attached to our name and our story of this life and our body of this life, and not realizing that that person over there that we're judging, that could have been, they might be just like who we once were or who we one day will be. It's a funny thing. And it's funny in a certain way, like our entire field of psychology is based on one's early childhood, because we understand who we are now is shaped by the past. And we must ask ourselves, and what shaped those first impressions? Your first reactions to the world when you were a baby? Well, in many cases that was shaped by who you were just before. I don't know if you've ever looked into the eyes of a newborn baby and seen like an old, I don't know if this has ever happened to you guys, or if this is because I'm a psychic, but you kind of like look into the eyes of like a newborn baby boy, and you almost see, looking back at you, the wisdom of an old man or an old woman. And I believe, like many of us, when we're first born into the world, we do retain some memory of our prior life, our most recent prior life, or sometimes it can be that we're remembering a life that quote unquote was a couple of times before. Now, it is my understanding that time is not linear but rather circular, and that maybe isn't relevant here, but just to say you could enter the timeline. When you enter a physical body, it's the physical that's tied to time, and so that puts you into the time loop. But you could theoretically enter it at any moment, and all the moments are accessible. It's simply we're entering into the time-space continuum. I guess that doesn't really matter maybe, but just to say, it's possible to sense an incarnation even if it's not the one that's closest to us in the time loop at this time. And so, for example, if you were a Native American 2,000 years ago, but since then you also lived in Ireland and Australia and all this stuff, when you're born again into a body in North America, it may be that you most feel, and recollections of prior lifetimes generally come through as a feeling. It's extremely, extremely rare that you would remember your name or the years of your life, or you know, the specific details, but what you're going to remember is like, I guess the way you remember it is sort of like the same way that you remember awakening from a dream. Do you know how sometimes like you wake up in the morning and you have just like this little bit of like a recollection, maybe of some specific aspects of the dream? I'm experiencing this of my dreams last night, just in this moment. And I remember at one point I was inside of a pool building with a collection of people, and it was strange because one of the pools was filled with dirty water, and it was like the larger pool, and it was the one I wanted to go in, but I got the sense it wasn't safe, and so I went in this other pool, which was by these big picture windows. And every time that I have a dream where I go in pools, it always seems to indicate some kind of cleansing of my spirit or mind, and then I awaken in a slightly different state. It's interesting, like as if I'd been cleared, like an energy clearing or something like that. But anyway, I didn't, and I don't at this time consciously remember the whole story of that dream. But if I were to walk past a pool, which I did, I just did, that's partially why I remember. I just walked past a pool building that's under construction, and it's like a part of you just, it like triggers something, but you don't quite know what. But there's that sense of familiarity. And there's many reasons. This is another video, and I literally, right in here actually, I have notes for a whole video, but this is gonna need to be a different topic. Why we don't remember our past lives and what happens if we do. Okay, so because occasionally people do, and it is difficult for a person. We feel like our identities are us when we're here, but actually the personality identity it barely hangs on in the presence of another personality and identity. Because if you think about it, like if you're middle-aged or you're young, your past life identity had more time to become strong than the identity of this life. And so if you're presented with that full recollection, it makes my heart sad in a certain way. That's one of the best things about the spirit world, is that when we're there, we can switch back and forth between all of our favorite identities and just kind of experience them. But we can, like, if we start to remember our family of that life, and we start to remember the name and the feeling and, you know, the wonderful songs from that culture and the tastes and the smells, and every life has pain too. Every life has remarkable pain. But it can make us homesick for another time and another place, like deeply homesick. And I actually did, I shared this in a recent video, but I prayed because I felt a calling back to the Victorian era. Like from the moment I was born, and I was raised in an old Victorian house as well, and that made the longing even stronger. And I just knew, somehow I just knew that I lived in the Victorian era, and I just wanted to remember, and I wanted to remember. And I prayed every night, and I prayed every day, and it took 27 years. And I remembered, or at least I think I remembered. I certainly had an experience, that's for sure. And it changed me. I've never been the same. In remembering, I incorporated an aspect of that part of the personality. That's an understatement. But there's just no other way to describe it. I am not who I was before remembering. And what I desired out of life, how I saw myself, how I saw my work, who I am, my mannerisms, all of it was colored by the identity of the prior life. And it matured me a lot. I lived through both world wars, and I was really shaped by that. I lived in Germany, so I was really shaped by that. And the tragedy of all of it and the individuals that were affected, which was everyone alive at that time. And anyway, I believe obviously this happened for a reason. Of course, I prayed for it for a long time and it was granted, my wish was granted. But I understand why most people, like if you just casually say, help me remember my past life, like that's not typically gonna happen. Because the moment you remember, your identity of this life is no longer, it's no longer who you are only. It's no longer this concrete thing. Your identity is changed by being exposed to another identity of who you are. And I think many people experience this as well when they have a near-death experience and they come directly in touch with their identity of their soul, which contains the complete beingness of every incarnation that has been had so far, if you think of it that way, up until this moment where we find ourselves now. And there's a phenomenon with those who, if only for a moment, experience themselves in that way. There's an extreme phenomenon. Most of them come back so deeply changed that they go through divorce, their marriages end, most of their relationships are changed, their interests are changed. They cannot maintain the same job, they cannot maintain the same close relationships because they are not the same. Everyone around them is the same and they are different, having changed by the memory of their other experience, even if however so brief. I suppose this isn't what I wanted to say about past lives, because I think past lives are so wonderful. I think one of the best things about incarnation is that we are given as many chances as we want, you know, to come and have experiences. And to me, like, this just takes the pressure off, because it does so many good things. I mean, it takes the pressure off because it's like, well, I'll make the most that I can of this life and this identity and this body, but I don't have to do everything. If I don't get to it now, I'll come back to it again another time. Or some of the experiences, I may have had them before. I will say, I'm not a mother. I don't anticipate I ever will be one in this life. And part of the reason why that causes me no distress whatsoever is having remembered the joy of, I feel complete because I remembered the experience. And I know I've had more than one experience of being a mother, of course, but I remembered a recent experience of being a mother. And so fully being a mother, and I feel complete on that experience. You know, I don't feel that I need to have that experience again. To me, I feel assured that past lives are real. I understand people may be watching that and they may not feel that way, and that's okay. You know, we're each on our own path having the experience we're intended to have. And it may not be supportive to everyone to believe in past lives. Many cultures, of course, around the world do believe in past lives. Many children, of course, do report their past life memories. I think of it like this, you know, if you're on the fence. Have you ever felt yourself drawn to a place you've never been? Like really drawn, like really pulled in. Maybe it's a culture that's far across the world and you've never been there and you don't even know if you ever will be, and yet every time you see pictures, this like gives me chills. I feel this way toward several places. One that comes to mind right now is Istanbul. But you just, it's like you've been there before, but you've never have. You know, that can be an indication that it's somewhere that you've lived before. Most of us have had the experience of encountering an individual Now, people use this a lot as a pickup line. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the real thing. You meet someone and you meet their eyes, and you recognize the light in their eyes, even though it is your first time meeting. That is likely someone you've known before. And it is true what they say, eyes are the window to the soul. In my experience, and I often am shown a person's prior life or a small bit of it in readings, the eyes do remain the same. Well, you may be thinking too, what do you mean by that? Are they always the same color and shape? No. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, there's a quality and characteristic in the light of the eyes which is consistent. And if you learn to see that and recognize that, you can recognize, we do recognize part of us. It's not the mind part. There's a deeper part of us that recognizes the characteristic of the soul, the light in the eyes of the other person. We recognize them when we see them, and it's sort of like that part of us is like, nice to see you again, you know? Or, well, the other phenomenon, possibility does exist. It's not nice to see you again. If that person if they played the villain role in the prior life, that can happen. Someone we don't know that we've never met evokes that fear and an unreasonable emotional response considering we've never known them. That's an indication. Something that happens to me a lot, the pull even in this moment is so strong, but you might hear old music. If you want to get in touch with your past lives, that's one of the better ways to do so. Or look at art, famous art or famous music from a culture that you feel resonantly drawn to. If you're trying, we cannot force ourselves to remember. Often we slip into these states, and it's when the mind is relaxed. But, you know, if there's a particular time period that you're drawn to, maybe you've seen this depicted in movies, or somehow you just have a sense, listening to real famous songs and looking at art from that period, maybe laying down listening with your eyes closed and just allowing your mind to wander, and just be free and just see what kind of flows into your awareness as you listen. I've definitely had that experience. And there are, of course, songs that that you've heard probably in multiple lifetimes before. Those can be real familiar, of course. And there's art that you may have been exposed to in multiple lifetimes, multiple cultures. But yeah, I think a lot of our preferences, even if you think about things like the food that we like to eat, like you may, as a kid, you may have craved very different food than your siblings, which might not make a lot of sense. I mean, you're genetically very much the same, and yet you find satisfaction in different foods. So like before I remembered having lived in Germany, I always was drawn to meats and cheeses and these sausages and these sorts of things. And like my sister was a vegetarian, still is to a large degree, but I mean almost vegan as a kid. She wouldn't touch the stuff, and so, and it was, but otherwise we were like, you know, in a lot of ways we were really similar. But it's just an interesting thing, like even without realizing I was drawn into many aspects that and even my way of being, even now, even before remembering, I think a lot of the habitus, the culture, it was still in me. And I think it's still in all of us, even though we don't remember. And I think that's wonderful. I think it's wonderful to be shaped by these experiences. We're each so unique, having lived in all these different places and all these different times, and how it contributes to our development and everything we learn along the way. And the more we live, the more compassion we have for people who are different. That is true, because we realize, I was once like you. I was once like you. I once struggled with that too. I once acted in that way when I was in a different state of consciousness or in a different place or had been raised in a different way. I was once like you. It's all okay. It's okay. We've been many things. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel so happy about, even though I don't know if I'm coming across as happy, but I just feel so happy about the incarnational journey. I think it's the most wonderful thing that is. And it does exist beyond Earth, but that's a whole other topic. But many incarnations are on Earth, and Earth is such a unique and exciting place. There's a lot of variety here for just one planet. There's so many possibilities. There's such a range of experience, and the soul delights in that and delights in every experience. Characters do appear from one life to the next. Where are we at in time? Okay, so I have like 7 or 8 minutes. Characters do appear from one life to the next. It is common to play a role in one life for someone. Say you're their teacher, and then in the very next life they appear again, but in a different role. This time you're the student, for example, or something else altogether. You're the taxi driver or something. But we often play roles, and that's what life is. It's a stage play where we each play different roles to help the person learn and practice certain skills that they wanted to practice in any given life, or gain certain experiences, or remember certain lessons, or practice certain values of the soul, or various different things. But we each set intentions for each life, and that itself is a joy of the soul, to simply decide, in this life I will explore like in this life, for me personally, I am exploring trust, faith, reliance on the invisible, mystery, the unexplained, letting go. I mean, these are some of my themes. Connection with the invisible realms. To rely on that which cannot be seen or heard, cannot be sensed with the physical senses, and to be totally reliant on that, which I am in many ways, is a unique life experience. That is my experience. Direct interaction with the invisible. That started very young, to say the very least. But anyway, so we create these themes, these desires, these things that we think will be of benefit to help us become more whole and complete as an essence, or simply for the joy of it or the passion of it. We set these themes, and then others who love us, other souls, and with whom we enjoy resonating, they agree to play certain roles to help us have the experience that we desire. And that does include what we would think of as negative roles, or like those who would hurt us, if that's what we need. If we need someone to betray us, or we need someone to lie to us, or someone has got to do it, and often it's the person that loves us most, or the soul that loves us most, that agrees to do it, to provide to us that experience. And everything really in our earthly lives is born of love. Yes. Past lives. Yeah, really pay attention to what you respond to, what feels familiar, although you've never been exposed to it, whether it's spices, music, art, food, a face, a place, anything, animals. Sometimes we see an animal and we feel warmly towards it, but it's an animal that doesn't even exist where we live, you know what I mean? But we just get the sense. I think animals, that it depends, but that could really spark your memory, because there are some bizarre animals, you know what I mean? And that's something the soul can remember, oh, I saw that, I remember the first time I ever saw that animal. Some of us may have memories, unfortunately, of animals that are no longer here. There are so many animal varieties that are not here on Earth anymore, that have gone. They've gone. Now, they do exist in the time loop, but they're not in this part of the time loop. And, dinosaurs, for example, and others. Many sea creatures, too. some of them do appear in this time, but only briefly, and then they disappear. But that's also another topic. But time itself is the great mystery. Yes, it is. And it's a very special phenomenon as well. But yeah, I don't know why you guys wanted me to talk about this. I briefly mentioned past lives in another Uncut video. And then I saw many comments like, please speak more about past lives. What is it exactly that you want me to speak about? What is it that you want me to speak about? Like regarding past lives, because I can say more. But in this video, I just decided to say a collection of random things about past lives that came up, which is that they're wonderful. The soul delights in the incarnational experience, and most of us have been most things. And that should give us compassion for the things and the people that we see around us and for our own self. And yes, we're here exploring themes that we chose and playing them out. And all experience is a joy to the soul, and all experience is valuable, including this moment right here, right now. And your soul is happy to be where you are in this culture, in this body, in this gender, in this time, in this moment. This is contributing to your development in ways beyond what you could imagine. And one day, when you're no longer in this life, this will be your past life. Yes, this will be your past life. And you may have a past life memory of this moment, watching this video about past lives, and you will probably doubt it and think, oh, this is just my imagination, as we all do when we remember our past lives. Oh, that's probably just my imagination. That probably never happened, but it did, and here we are. It's happening right now. Yes, this moment will be one for which you're nostalgic. You know, at some point in time, your soul's gonna be nostalgic for hot Cheetos and Mountain Dew and the, you know, whatever it so happens to be, the Oreo cookie, you know what I mean, and Ariana Grande or whatever, you know what I mean, like these cultural phenomenons. Bridgerton is really popular right now, and you'll think so fondly of, oh, remember when I had those hot Cheetos and I watched Bridgerton? Oh, that was a delightful incarnation. You know what I mean? The whole thing, everything is beautiful, everything is valid. So, yeah, have no fear. There's no need to do everything in one life. Just do what you can. Make the most of each day and the identity that you have now. And no, this isn't the only one you'll be given, but this is the one you have now, and it is good. Thank you for watching. Many blessings, and namaste.